Ask the next guys. 3 words from Shane Van Gisbergen after the biggest wreck of his season. He wouldn't say Austin Hill's name, he wouldn't blame anyone directly. But everyone in that garage knew exactly what he meant. If you're a NASCAR fan, make sure to subscribe, drop a comment, and hit like before we get into this one. Shane Van Gisbergen started the San Diego race on pole position, and he came into the weekend with one specific target in mind. He was 1 win away from tying Jeff Gordon's record for most road course wins in NASCAR Cup Series history. Heading into this event, Van Gisbergen had already won 6 of his last 7 road course races, a stretch that made him the clear favorite the moment the entry list was released. This race carried extra significance beyond the record chase, since it was the very first NASCAR Cup Series race ever held at Naval Base Coronado, an event called the Anduril 250, run on an active military installation for the first time in series history. Van Gisbergen was driving the number 97 Red Bull Chevrolet for Trackhouse Racing, and his team made a calculated decision before the race even began. He gave up his Stage 1 points on purpose, choosing to optimize his car's setup specifically for a Stage 3 run at the win rather than splitting focus across the earlier stages. It was a bet on the bigger prize, built entirely around the belief that the number 97 car would be fast enough late in the race to make the sacrifice worthwhile. His teammate, Connor Zilisch, was having the best day of his career at the same time. The young driver in the number 88 Red Bull Chevrolet took the lead on lap 23. And that moment marked the first time he had ever led laps in the NASCAR Cup Series. Zilisch led for 8 laps total, running up front with composure and pace that suggested he was ready for his first career top 10 finish. Both Trackhouse cars were fast all afternoon, and both were sitting in position to contend for the win as the race moved into its middle stages. Then came lap 32. The field lined up for a restart after Brent Cruz, who was filling in for the injured Christopher Bell, suffered a gearbox failure that ended his day early. On the restart, Austin Hill, driving the number 33 Chevrolet for Richard Childress Racing, lined up on the front row directly next to Connor Zilisch. Shane Van Gisbergen lined up third, positioned directly behind Hill heading into the corner. Heading into turn 1, the situation unraveled in a matter of seconds. Hill carried too much speed into the corner and went too deep. He missed the apex completely and slid up the racetrack, losing the line he needed to hold. Zilisch had nowhere to go as Hill drifted up toward him, and he was pinched hard into the concrete wall with no room to escape. Hill also made contact with the wall in the same sequence. Van Gisbergen, running right behind both of them, had no room and no time to stop. He drove into the back of Hill's car and spun out as a result. In a matter of seconds, 3 of the fastest cars in the entire race were finished for the day. By the time the wreck fully played out, 9 cars total had been caught up in the incident. Daniel Suarez, Ryan Blaney, Michael McDowell, Riley Herbst, John Hunter Nemechek, and Ty Gibbs all sustained damage to varying degrees. Both Trackhouse cars were destroyed beyond repair for the day. Hill's car was wrecked as well, ending his shot at a strong Cup finish despite his speed earlier in the event. The impact was forceful enough to knock the turn 1 wall out of place, and notably. That same wall had already been hit and damaged the day before during Saturday's lower tier race at the same track. NASCAR brought out the red flag immediately, and track crews needed about 10 minutes to repair the wall structurally before the race could safely continue. Austin Hill knew immediately that the crash was his fault, and he didn't wait to address it. As soon as he came to a stop, he got on his team radio and said, "Sorry guys, locked up the rear brakes." It was an instant acknowledgement made before he had even left the car that the mistake belonged to him. Shane Van Gisbergen drove his heavily damaged Red Bull Chevrolet straight to the garage and then went to the infield care center for evaluation. When reporters approached him afterward, he gave short, controlled, direct answers that made his frustration clear without him having to elaborate. Asked what caused the crash, he said, "Ask the next guys." Asked whether it was simply a racing incident, he said, "It's just unfortunate." Asked how disappointed he was given the circumstances, he said, "I'm filthy." He described his own car's pace as unreal fast once the track had rubbered up through the run, and he called the entire outcome a real shame. repeating the phrase to emphasize how badly the day had gone. He had led 7 laps that day in a car he believed was capable of winning the race outright. Connor Zilisch was just as disappointed as his teammate, but he was noticeably more direct about where he placed the blame for what happened. He said, "Hill didn't give me any space heading into the corner." When asked whether the contact was simply part of normal racing, Zilisch chose his words with clear intent. He said, "I wouldn't call it aggressive, I'd call it a little more egregious than that." For a young driver still relatively early in his Cup Series career, choosing the word egregious over the far more common and forgiving word aggressive carried real weight. It signaled that Zilisch viewed the contact as something beyond a normal racing risk. At the same time, Zilisch acknowledged the severity of the physical impact and credited the sport's safety progress, saying, "It's a big hit. Concrete walls are no joke, but I'm thankful for the safety of these cars and how far we've come as an industry." He went on to explain just how much the missed opportunity hurt, given exactly where he was running before the crash. Zilisch said, "When you have a chance to go and win a race and you're in a prime spot and you get put in a position like that, it's extremely tough." This marked Zilisch's 6th DNF of the 2026 season, adding another non-finish to an already difficult rookie stretch. It was also the first time in his career that he had ever led laps in the Cup Series, and despite that milestone, he still did not finish the race. He added that the outcome was difficult for everyone on his side of the garage, saying, "I really hate it for everyone at Trackhouse Red Bull. This was a huge weekend for us, and to have both cars out is really unfortunate." Austin Hill, for his part, did not avoid responsibility once he had time to process what happened. After leaving the infield care center, he gave a detailed technical explanation of exactly what went wrong on track. He said, "I got into turn 1 a little deep and started sliding. I was sliding the rears and I slid the fronts a little bit. On corner exit, I was fully locked to the right, just trying to stay off the number 88. He explained that the proximity of Zilisch's car directly limited the options he had available entering the corner, saying, "If I had that extra car width and the number 88 wasn't there, I would have cleared fine. But knowing that he was out there, I carried a little too much entry pace compared to what I had been doing all day." Hill then walked through the exact moment of contact that triggered the larger chain reaction, saying, "Right when I touched him and he got in the wall, it sucked me into him and I couldn't stay off of him. I hate it for Connor and the number 88 team, and I apologize to those guys." Notably, Hill had also won Saturday's NASCAR O'Reilly Series race at this same track just one day earlier, and he said he was still in the process of adjusting to how Cup Series cars behave on road courses compared to the lower series. He stated, "I'm starting to figure out these Cup cars a little bit more, especially on the road courses." So, that's a good sign. The crash did far more than simply end Shane Van Gisbergen's afternoon early. It significantly damaged his position in the championship standings at a critical point in the season. He had entered San Diego ranked 14th in the standings, sitting comfortably above the playoff cut line with room to spare, because his team had deliberately given up Stage 1 points to optimize for a Stage 3 win. His entire risk calculation for the weekend depended on finishing strong. Instead, Van Gisbergen finished 38th and scored just one single point for the day. As a direct result, he dropped all the way to 17th in the standings, now sitting 5 points below the cut line and fully outside the current playoff picture. The consequences extend beyond this one-race weekend as well. Because of his poor finish in San Diego, Van Gisbergen will now be placed in Group 1 qualifying for the next event, a format that makes it considerably more difficult to start near the front of the field. He acknowledged this challenge himself afterwards, saying, "Luckily, we've got a good next week, but unfortunately we'll be in Group 1 qualifying again, which makes it tougher. Just got to go and execute." The next race on the schedule takes place at Sonoma, another road course where Van Gisbergen has historically performed at an extremely high level. Connor Zilisch heads into that event carrying his 6th DNF of the season, but also carrying proof that his car can legitimately run at the front against the best in the field. Austin Hill heads into Sonoma hoping that his detailed, on-camera apology was enough to settle any lingering tension with both Trackhouse drivers before they're racing close together again. with Van Gisbergen refusing to even say Hill's name directly to reporters and Zilisch publicly choosing the word egregious to describe the contact. The next time these three cars line up near each other on the racetrack will be closely watched by everyone in the garage. The final numbers from San Diego summarize exactly how the day unfolded for everyone involved. Shane Van Gisbergen left the track with 1 single point. Connor Zilisch left with 0. Austin Hill left with his Saturday trophy still intact. But with a costly Sunday wreck now hanging over him heading into the next event, Trackhouse Racing lost both of its leading cars in the exact same corner, on the exact same lap, ending what had been shaping up as one of Red Bull's strongest weekends of the entire season and turning it into one of its most costly instead.